So Shane, you're on the podcast for the first time here, right here in the nearly famous Blue House in Celina, Texas, and you happen to be running for elected office right here in Celina. Tell us who you are and what are you running for?
Well, thank you, Ron, and thank you for having me here today. Really appreciate it and appreciate everything you do for the city and
thank you.
The involvement that you have shown over the years. So, I'm here and I'm running because it's just a part of who I am. I am a person of service. I'm very committed in my Christian faith. I'm committed as a husband and father. I'm committed to my children. And I love seeing people and places prosper. And I'd say the precursor was obviously living here and falling in love with the city of Celina. Reminds me of cities I grew up in, very, very small cities that although the greater community grew, they protected the downtown like we want to see happen for Celina. And, another thing is that serving for nearly the last 2 years on the Celina Economic Development Corporation, I've gained a greater insight as to how the economics of development growth, the restrictions, some good and some not so good decisions of the past have impacted the people, the development, the tax rates, and such. So I found this to be the right time, and I have the time to commit myself to serving for the current and future position of Celina.
Okay, so it's Shane Lambert, and you're running for which seat?
Yes, Shane Lambert. I'm running for City Council Seat 5.
Okay, and who is actually in that seat right now?
So that seat was the incumbent, Mindy, chose not to run.
Okay, so Mindy Keeney had the seat. She's not running. You decide to hop in. You've got some opponents or an opponent.
Yes.
And who are you running against for seat 5?
Running against Mr. Beatty.
Okay, so it's obviously a big process, or at least, it's always been for me in deciding to run for office. There's a lot of thinking and praying, and, ultimately it comes down to that pivotal moment where you have to say yes or no. So what was that process like for you in getting all the way up to the point to where you're like, I'm going to do it?
Sure. Once again, it was, serving on the EDC and seeing decisions made and seeing, right now in Celina, like my business background in restaurants, it's a game of inches. We don't have millions of dollars to spend, and most certainly not to unwisely spend.
Right.
So serving on the EDC and seeing the potential of the city, and yet the extreme concern and discernment that must take place with how that money is spent, that was a big part in me deciding that this would be a time for me to get involved. I have a strong background and understanding of finance, financial statement analysis, business, and understanding, like I said, the game of inches that contributes to a business being successful or not, and how this city is run and how it grows. Right now, it's a game of inches. Every single financial decision has to be weighed very carefully so that we protect the citizens. We simply cannot have any increase in tax rates or property taxes. So
okay.
How we spend the money coming in is important.
So talk to me, what's the home side of that decision-making process look like? Like you bring it up to your wife, assuming you're married.
Yes.
You've got kids.
Yes.
And I know that because I've seen your social media. I know you just got back from a big long trip. At the time we're recording this right now,
yes.
I think you just flew in yesterday. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm about 13 hours off of a 12 and a half hour flight.
So on the home side of that decision-making process, what does that look like? Is it,
sure,
do you bring it up? Does your wife initially think you're out of your mind for even thinking about doing it? And what does that process look like to get you to the point where you actually go down, file your treasure, and make it known to everyone in the world, hey, I'm running for office?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. It's wonderful. The home life version is just great on many parts. Touch on those.
Yeah, tell me.
Starting with my wife, I just, first of all, I want to honor my wife after, and I think it's so important for men to honor their wife. And I love you, Afton. I think you're wonderful. She's been nothing but supportive the whole way through. She was supportive of me on the Economic Development Corporation. She's been supportive of me through all of our business decisions. And the restaurant business is not easy. We've lost restaurants. We've built restaurants, and she's been supportive every step of the way. Now let me transition to my father. I am so fortunate that my mother and father, 83 years old, live right across the street from me in Celina.
Oh, wow, that's really nice.
My father was the president of the Chamber of Commerce where we grew up. He ran for city council. He was a campaign chairperson for Jim Brulte, a former senator in California, and successfully ran a campaign for a California mayor. So there's a little bit of this in the blood. And my dad is so supportive and proud of me. And then there's my daughter, my 21-year-old daughter, Quincy, who we went to go visit in Rome. She's in her second semester of her junior year with Loyola Chicago University, pursuing a degree in political science. She just has been accepted to 2 internships, one with Congressman Hearn, another one with Congressman Jim Jordan. And so for me to be able to just follow in some of the family footprints and set a good example for my children and have the support of my wife, like I said, it's wonderful. I've got support all the way around.
So talk to me just a little bit about what you do. Like, obviously, you are a business owner, and I think, I don't know if you want to share what businesses you own, but they're fairly well known. So do you want to share any of that with us?
Oh, well, sure, yes. So I am a part of an ownership group of a local restaurant company. It falls underneath the umbrella of Apostrophe D, but the restaurants we own are True Fire, which is located in Frisco, and that's a Mediterranean Italian restaurant. And then we also own Killapai, which is a Detroit-style pizzeria and Italian bistro that's located in the Gates of Prosper. Now, outside of that, 7 years ago, my father and I, having experienced, helping people through our church and stuff, we came to meet people who were going through alcohol and drug recovery and recovery homes. And so we would go visit those and doing prison ministries and whatnot. And we saw what a horrible way that these sober living homes were being conducted. 3 bunk beds, 6 men to a room, men in the garage. And so 7 years ago, I went to my father and I said, with our background in ministry and helping people, we need to do a better job than what's being done with this. So 7 years ago, we bought a home in McKinney, and we turned it into a sober living home. And we learned the hard way. We dealt with city issues, and we got sued, and we did a little bit of trial by error. But we 7 years later, we now have 5 homes. We do about 10 men to a home. So we have 50 men that we mentor through recovery. And it's not just alcohol and drugs. We mentor men on recovering from alcohol and drug addiction. We see families reunited. I personally teach finance, how to manage your banking, how to go to an interview, how to hold your head up high, and how to talk to somebody, and how to keep that job. So that is, yes, it's a business, but it's a ministry also, and it's a calling for us to help men reacclimate to society and reunite with their kids and reunite with their wives and hold down jobs and relearn basic skills. So those are the 2 industries that I'm involved with, is drug and alcohol recovery and restaurant touring, both service-related fields.
Very good. And I think I may have actually invested in your restaurants a little bit over the last year here or so. So what's it like being in the restaurant industry right now? What's that like?
It's tough, Ron. The restaurant industry is it's a tough one. The margins are small. You're dealing with people, and I tell people, I have found this to be true in business, is that, yes, I'm a restaurateur, but I'm really a behavior modificationist, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to exact a behavior, right? We're trying to get chefs to do a certain thing. We're trying to get servers to do a certain thing. We're trying to get managers to do a certain thing, and to provide an uplifting, positive environment. So it's challenging because we're dealing with tough margins. I can tell you that the restaurant industry has not recovered from COVID
Interesting.
and the economic conditions that have followed after that. I don't believe we can run successful businesses and increasing prices at the rate of inflation and different factors on the economy level. So we have to figure out ways to operate smarter with the money we're having. You can't pass everything on to consumer, but we know what you can pass on is kindness and love and appreciation. And I'm happy to say we have very stable staffs. We have a very low turnover, and it's just treating your people right. It's serving a great product. And it's having a servant mindset, but it's a tough business.
Well, that's a little unfortunate in the sense that the house we're sitting in right now is one that my wife and I would like to turn into a restaurant one day. So we may have to have a little side discussion about all the, the pros and cons of that right now, because certainly you would understand and know about that. But let's talk a little bit more about your family. So you've got, obviously you've got the wife, you've got a daughter who seems like she's on an accelerated path towards also living a very servant lifestyle. But how long have you guys actually lived in Celina?
My wife and I and our daughter have lived in Celina for just about almost 7 years now.
And what was it that brought you to Celina? Of all places, you could go anywhere on the map. You moved from somewhere to here. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we actually moved most recently from Austin to here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we've been in Texas for a while.
Okay.
We're
good,
Texans.
Good.
When we were looking at places to live, we explored Prosper, Frisco. Celina had the feel of the places where I grew up. I'm a California refugee.
And, all right, we have to pause on that for 1 second. A California refugee, what does that mean? I move a lot of people here from California, and I don't know if this is the case for you or not. We've not talked about this, but I've moved people here being in real estate who they don't like the overbearing taxes. They don't like the homelessness that's out of control, the drug problems. There's just so much, the fuel cost, there's so many things, and they want to escape that and come here, and they fully embrace Texas culture and a lot of the values that are shared here that are not necessarily that way in California. So I'm curious, is that you, or is that similar to you? What's your situation?
I'd say it's similar. I do not want a California, our Texas.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
And that's a promise.
We can wrap up the podcast.
Check my voting record on that one.
Yep. We can wrap up the podcast right there. It's done. No, really good. But tell me about that.
California has some nice things, right? Beaches, palm trees, mountains. I think most of the people there are pretty nice, but politically, cost-wise, like you mentioned, I feel bad for the homeless segment. I really do. And, we have homeless people that we take off the streets and help in our sober homes. I think we have an obligation to help people. And the more blessed we are, the more we should be helping people. I just don't believe and don't trust the government to do that for me.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we fell in love with Celina because the small town that I grew up in California was a 60-mile suburb of Los Angeles, nothing like Los Angeles, very conservative values, small town values. There were no chain restaurants, not even a Starbucks in the little city that I grew up in. I then later moved to Napa, California, where once again, the little town I lived in, St. Helena, other than A&W, root beer and burger stand, which was grandfathered in, no chains. It was all small town, cool stuff. And Celina has that, and it's going to keep that. So
that's a great segue into how do we keep that? Because that's one of the big deals is obviously, literally everybody wants to move here. And there's a lot of different thoughts out there. And this is such a rehashed concept. And so we're not talking about any new territory here, but, we all came here at some point. Very few of us actually were born and raised and grew up here. I've been here since 93. So what is that, 33 years now? So 33 years, I've seen this town go through many, many changes. It was either 1,700 or 1,900 people when I came here. Not even 2,000 people. It was a very different town, a very different square, different types of businesses, and a whole lot of history and a whole lot of people who we used to have, just as an example, things that you don't see anymore is we used to have like a town marshal. Okay. We had a few reserve police officers. I was one in the beginning, and a town marshal who would drive around and patrol, and stuff like that. That's how far back I've been in this town. And so fast forward to now, and one of the thought processes out there is, how do we stop people from coming here? And I think we can all safely say at this point, we're not going to be able to do that. They're coming here. There's something amazing about the city that appeals to an awful lot of people, and they want a little bit of what we have. They want that small town feel. They want the location. It's all about location. We're situated in such a great location, being, between 75 and the tollway. You can get access to Dallas and all points south. You can also go north towards Sherman. I mean, we're in a great spot. But, along with all of that growth comes a lot of responsibility. So I'd like to kind of identify, where does Shane stand on all of the growth and that sort of thing? I mean, do you agree with me? We can't Katie bar the door. We're not keeping anyone out.
Right. Well, you said something that stands out to me, and you said that that this is what we want. And the people are coming here because of what we have. So let's not change who we are. How do we do that? Celina has a pretty significant landmass.
Very, very large.
Large landmass. And the downtown can, will, and should be protected to maintain and stay what it is. And, let's acknowledge what's happening. We've got some big box companies coming to town. Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. And I think the city has done a good job on where those are located for the most part, because they're not in the middle of downtown. They're not changing downtown.
Thank God for that.
Thank God for that.
Right.
And I think that one thing is nice is that the mayor, the city council, and the powers that be have made those decisions wisely, and they'll continue to be made that way. The investment in downtown must continue in a thoughtful, methodic, and collaborative manner. City council, I've had the awesome opportunity, being on the EDC, to attend many joint meetings and work with city council. And I have nothing but friends on city council and in the EDC. And I've seen how much can be accomplished through collaboration. And that collaboration is what needs to continue to make wise decisions. Is everybody going to agree on everything all the time? No.
And I would hope not.
And hope not. But City Hall or City Council needs strong, independent voices that have seen small towns grow properly, have lived in them, that have experience working with the economics of the city like I do, and that are strong enough in character and confident enough, not arrogant, but confident enough to stand the ground, to stand up for, speak to what's right, and also the negotiation ability and communication skills to work with others, and sometimes, to convince or collaborate, or at least land on a middle ground that protects that.
There you go. I like it. I agree with you that the downtown is such a critical part of who we are. It's our identity. It's our history. It's a great place for, everybody to kind of come together. We have events downtown. There's, you've got a lot of mom and pop type shops downtown that you don't get. And, thank God for the Home Depots and the Walmarts and all that. We need all of those things. We absolutely do. And I'm a big fan of those and attend Lowe's and those places quite often. But I think that there's something to be said for what we have downtown that you can't replicate in a retail, commercial strip facing Preston Road.
Yes.
You just lose some of that feel that we have downtown. So would I be correct when I say then you're a big proponent of downtown protecting what we have right now and even helping it to thrive?
I'm a huge fan. I'm the biggest fan of protecting the downtown for what it is and helping it thrive. And some examples, I want to make sure that I don't, come across too vague here. But for example, in the EDC, we passed a resolution to approve an outdoor patio project. that allows for existing businesses and for other businesses that open the downtown to apply for financial assistance in beautifying the existing structure. Now, what does that do? That provides longevity, it provides an attractiveness, and it actually helps those businesses to be able to have more people in seats, have more people come in and spend their money there, and it brings more revenue and more support to the local downtown. So yes, I'm a big proponent in properly, thoughtfully, collaboratively investing in downtown infrastructure and beautification, sidewalks, lights, patio fixtures, things that make that keep our downtown what it is, but enhance what it is.
So there's something really, really interesting about you that has an awful lot of interest to me, and I'll explain that in just a second. But I don't know how much of this is visible right here in front of us right now on camera, depending on the angle of it. But tell us what we're looking at right here. What is this?
Yep. So a little insight into me and my quirkiness. I'm a collector. I really value history. I love history, and I love preserving things. And I was that weird kid that my parents would buy me Hot Wheels or Matchbox cars, which I also have here. They've never touched dirt. They've never been outside. I just like to collect and preserve things. And so my original release, 1977 and 78 Star Wars figures are one of my prized possessions, something that I've had over the years. And so, yeah, these are my little Star Wars buddies.
So you've got these are all 1977, 1978 original action figures. You actually played with and collected and kept these over all the years. Is that right?
That is correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So there's definitely a lot of history here. And let me explain kind of why that, kind of resonates with me a little bit. I am an absolute Star Wars nerd, and going back to obviously A New Hope, 1977, big deal. How old was I back then? 77. I guess I would have been 9 years old. And it was literally the best thing ever. It was you just almost had to live it to know it. So are you old enough to have actually lived that, or did you come along just a little bit after all of this?
No, I'm old enough to have lived it. My parents bought these for me as the movie came out, and they bought me the case that goes along with it. It's just a cheap little plastic case, but it is the original. And I just keep things. I just take care of things.
So you're gonna help preserve downtown because you like preserving things.
Well, see, that's exactly right. It's in my nature. I was born this way. I was born the preserver.
I think that's awesome. I think it's incredible. So out of all the toys down here, so they originally in 1977 they released 12, and so those are probably the most. I would assume, generally speaking, the most collectible.
Yes.
Then you have Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, 2 movies that came out after that. And they continue to release figures in different, like maybe you originally had a Luke Skywalker just in his regular tattooing type, outfit. And then later they came out with a Luke Skywalker who is in an X-Wing fighter pilot gear and that sort of thing. So, and you've got a pretty good little mix from the different original 3 movies here. Did you have a favorite?
I would say The Empire Strikes Back was my favorite.
Okay, so you like the characters that kind of go with Empire, and there's one missing down here.
It's so sad. I managed to preserve everything except for, of course, Darth Vader. He took off. Did Darth Vader leave the collection when you were younger or more recently? When I was younger.
Okay,
and I wish I could remember how or what, but I cannot.
Have you ever thought about maybe, I know it wouldn't be your original one, but have you ever thought about going and getting one and then just maybe making note that this is not my original toy, but just to have in your collection to have a Darth Vader, because it just seems so weird not having a Darth Vader.
It does seem so weird.
Isn't it?
But there's 2 problems with that. Okay. One is that it just wouldn't match for me. It wouldn't. And number 2 is there's no chance I'm going to pay what it would cost to get the original, even if I could find it.
I gotcha. I understand. So a while ago, whenever you were opening these up and setting these up, and we were talking about them just a little bit, you had mentioned that one of these characters kind of reminds you of somebody from Celina. You want to share that real quick? I think that's really, really awesome.
Well, I couldn't help but noticing when I pulled Obi-Wan Kenobi out. I don't even think I need to tell you who he reminds me of, but this is my good friend Gentry Pace. Love you, Gent.
All right. So for people who don't know Gentry, he looks very much like Ben Kenobi. As a matter of fact, yes, I may just start calling Gentry Obi-Wan now because I never really thought about it, but you're absolutely right. So that's awesome. And that's not necessarily a negative thing.
It's not negative at all. He was the Master Jedi.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. So that's really, really cool. And I know you brought some more things, and we're going to look at those here in just a minute too, but let's talk a little bit more about Celina.
Yes.
And so we talked a little bit about the downtown and how important all of that stuff is. Give me an idea, because we don't really know you that well yet. You've been serving on EDC, you've been in Celina for 7 years, but you're really kind of stepping into the limelight right now. So we want to know a little bit more about Shane and what he likes, and how he takes the city of Celina on a daily basis. Meaning, where do you like to eat in Celina? Like if you're coming to the square. And we've got some great options. And let me just give this disclaimer. If you choose one, it doesn't mean anything about not liking others. But we just want to know, like, what would be a good typical place to go in and see Shane sitting down and eating around the square?
Sure. Great question. And I'm going to try to mention several of you. But I'm also going to emphasize, like I do in many of my corny little Shane and Afton post, and I hope you're all enjoying Afton as well, but I'm a big family man, and that's why you see her a lot. But I have several favorites. I've got to say Summer Moon. Thank you for allowing me to turn that into my new office.
Right.
I'm just a plain black coffee guy.
Well,
but love the environment, highly supportive. Let's see, Mangiamo's.
Okay, good.
I love the Big Bob. And I'm there as often as possible. Heyday with the yellow fin tuna poke bowl. Must have. Okay. Tenders can never go wrong. I spend time there. And due to the family's love for Mexican food, you'll find us at least once a week. Grandma, Grandpa, Shane. I think 4 generations of us. I think there's 4 generations now.
Right.
In Papa Gallo's. I like the street tacos, the brisket. Lucy's on the square. I'm coming your way soon. I haven't been there in a while, but I promise you. And shout out to Annie Jacks and Brent for inviting me in and making me an awesome cappuccino.
Nice. Yeah, they've got the coffee bar set up.
The coffee bar is super cool. Highly feel great about that. Wow, there's a lot to love about downtown Celina, isn't there?
There is. Downtown Celina is absolutely amazing. And you mentioned Brent. That's the gentleman that you're running against right now. He happens to be married, or I guess co-owner of Annie Jack over there. And so you said he invited you in and you had a cappuccino or whatever.
Yes.
Talk to me about your relationship with him. Did you guys know each other before this came up? And what's that like now?
Sure. We did not know each other before. And we met briefly at a EDC event at 229. And Brent actually came up to me, and thank you for doing so. It was really admirable and appreciate that. Invited me to, and then I reached out to him and said, hey, let's get together and, let's get to know each other. And what a great gentleman. I absolutely respect his education and military training, and thank you for what you've done for our country and for the community. I think Brent's a very good guy.
Yep, and I have also invested a fair amount of money in his wife's shop there, or I guess in their shop.
Yes.
And do you guys ever go on? Does your wife like to shop in Annie Jack, Willow House? Does she do all of those things on the square as well?
Yes, she does. The answer is yes.
Yes, with a smile on your face. That's right. Exactly. Well, I think that, there's a lot of growth going on, and I think, it's very almost cliche now to say that we've got to kind of manage that growth, that sort of thing. So Talk to me, speak to that just a little bit. What does it look like when somebody says we have to manage that growth? Going beyond cliche, what does that mean to Shane?
To me, managing the growth means that you have to have the acclimate to know how to look at a proposition and know if it makes sense. You've got to be able to read a financial statement or proposed financial statement and say, does the top line, the cost, and bottom line make sense? And there's been situations on the EDC where I've been the one to speak up and say, this doesn't make sense. And it's about protecting the investment of the city, but it's also about protecting the individual. I have seen too many times, especially in the restaurant industry, somebody pull together their life savings with ill-informed and lack of experience and knowledge of what they're doing. And nobody wants to see somebody go bankrupt or an empty building occur downtown. So what it means is being able to look at the finances. Do they make sense for both the city and the individual who's looking to start a small business? And the decision has to be based upon, you got to have the strength of character and the knowledge of finances to know, is this a good way or bad way to spend the money? And there's also responsibilities. There are some things that are tenant improvements for a business and some things that are restorative and the city should participate in. Those decisions can't be taken lightly. As I said earlier, it's a game of inches right now. We are growing. We're not deep pockets right now. I think the signs are there that we have more income coming in, and that's great. But even more reason to be conservative, thoughtful, and responsible on how we invest that money.
Very good. And so, we're facing a lot of different challenges as a quickly growing city and a very diverse community. Talk to me about what you foresee as maybe, if you have to choose one of the challenges that we're going to be facing, in say the next 3 years, what might one of those challenges be?
Well, the number one issue facing Celina and many cities in Texas is water. We can't deny that. And, the resources are scarce. Nobody likes the rationing. And there needs to be common sense, practical ways of going about furthering our commitment and relationship with the Lake Ralph project. I think there's things that aren't talked about and collaborated enough as far as, instead of just randomly imposing restrictions, I believe there are certain times of day when the water reservoirs are more plentiful and it's a wiser time to water. I think that in time there can be ways to have incentives to those who comply to those regulations, to where that can actually ease some of the water bills and some of the pressure that's put on the citizen. But moving into the future, our relationships, collaborations, negotiations, and building proper reservoirs and increasing the water supply, not only the ability, but the way that we handle it is fundamental. It's the foundation for which other things can grow upon. So that's the number one issue facing the city, and it's something that we've got to take serious and we've got to have communication and collaboration on.
So if we can get past the water just a little bit, let's say that we get that situation resolved and that's no longer the biggest obstacle or thing sitting right in front of us. What do you think, what sits behind that? What's the next thing in line, or what else might we see lined up real close to the water issue? That's out of the way. What else are we looking at as a community?
Roadways, sidewalks, paths, parks.
Okay. Something you've thought about, obviously. Talk to me about that. What do you mean?
Well, roadways. So when we approve a development and we put in a 2-lane road, that 3 years later down the road, no pun intended, we're going to dig up and convert to 1 lane. So everybody leaving their house now takes 30 minutes to get to the tollway to go 2 blocks. And we're now pouring a bunch of money into something that could have been perhaps done more efficiently and effectively in the first place. I think that's important. So future development. Current conditions. We can't ignore roadways that need repair. And I understand a lot of it's NTTA and some of it's county, and we have a close proximity. We share a lot of these decisions with Prosper. But once again, collaboration, communication, negotiation, roadways. So those are some of the good examples of how to go about and approach the roadways and the development and the re-enhancement of existing roadways and sidewalks.
There's going to be a certain number of people who live downtown who aren't always going to be, maintaining or keeping what they've always had. And that's a tough problem. So can you address that just a little bit? How do you deal with and respond to people who, we'll use my house as an example. Let's just say I did live here. And now I'm like, Shane, I don't want this 400 car parking garage across from me. I don't want to have to look out and see that thing. How do you address that?
That's tough, Ron. And there's probably not a answer that's going to please everyone. But I would look at it from the aspect of growth is going to happen. These downtown businesses need to survive and they need to grow. If you look at what we had at our joint Economic Development and City Council meeting back a couple months ago, the amount of foot traffic downtown has decreased. And we're not going to be the city of a beautiful, charming downtown if we don't allow some enhancements that protect and provide for all the business owners. And that in part, it does absolutely help the citizens. So are there going to be some tough decisions on locations of things like the parking garage? Yes, but what we can do is we can be very thoughtful and resist certain annexations and eminent domains so that, that the people can remain where they are, have what they have, but there are going to be some enhancements that probably change to some degree the aesthetics.
So there's not always going to be an easy answer.
There's not
going to be an answer probably ever that's going to make everyone happy. And let's just talk about in this particular case. And the reason that I'm not up in arms about that 400 space parking garage is because I do believe that while it may not, if I lived here, it's not going to be a happy day for me to have to look out and see this big thing. But at the same time, I have to understand that it does make it better for all of my neighbors, my community, my city. And so sometimes it's a matter of like asking for something extra from me, a little more sacrifice for the greater good almost. We need parking downtown. We want everyone to have that great experience. So yeah, it's unfortunate that becomes your view now. But, as a city, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make that parking garage look as nice as we possibly can. We want it to aesthetically look nice. It's not going to be, we're going to maintain it. You're not going to have to worry about looking out there and seeing this building. Oh, and by the way, the weeds are 4 feet tall around it. And, we're not going to do that. We're going to be responsible with what we do as well, because we owe that to you as citizens. And maybe, and this is just me talking, and my mind works in, somewhat different ways sometimes, very much as an investor. Maybe the fact that there's a 400 car parking garage across there, maybe there's a way that we could rezone this property, turn it into something that would actually benefit from having a 400 car parking garage across from me. So now maybe, maybe I'm sitting on an asset that actually has high value, and I could leverage that to purchase a home somewhere else where, there's not probably going to be that kind of growth. So I think that what you said, that collaboration, communication, and working out things like that hopefully are going to be possible in many of the cases, not in all. Sometimes it's just simply going to be the luck of the draw. This is where you happen to choose home, or your family did, and that's super unfortunate. We've had this property in our family for 40 years. Wow. And now they're putting in a big, whatever across from me. City Hall is going to go in here, or they're knocking down that whole side of the road so that they can do this or that, widen the road, or whatever happens. So it's going to be difficult going through that stuff. And we've faced challenges recently in other ways in Celina. I'd like to get your take on all of the stuff that has happened with the ISD recently.
Yes, it's very unfortunate, and I have a great niece that attends Celina High School, and so we never ever want to have to see what happened for so many reasons. It's not reflective of Celina. It's not reflective of Celina ISD. It's something bad that happened within Celina ISD. And it's a good time for an election. It's a good time for further collaboration. And it's a good time for us to, I really think, we need to gather around and support Celina ISD. We need to have stronger, you're going to hear me say this a lot though, and I'm just going to go on one little side tangent real quick. A lot of the things that we're talking about, politicians say they're going to do. Oh, we're going to have this, we're going to collaborate. But I am committed 100% to having those conversations, those relationships. And although the ISD operates independently of the EDC and the City Council, it doesn't mean there can't be stronger involvement, collaboration, and communications. So right now is a time of healing. A lot of good decisions have been made. We welcome the new head coach from Wichita Falls. We have an election coming up for the ISD. This is the time for us to be a community, to rally around the ISD, support the ISD, have stronger communications, involvement, and not just someone sitting here saying that, but once elected, actually do that and influence the rest of the board members to do that. It's a time of healing and rebuilding.
I like that. It is. I think that it is definitely important for people to realize that was an outlier situation.
Absolutely.
That is not indicative at all of the kind of community we are, the kind of, staffing and administration we have in our ISD or anywhere in Celina. And it's the most unfortunate thing in the world. It's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's literally something that you hope you never, ever have to see. I was a police officer for many years, saw a lot of awful things. And there are things that you hope that, the rest of the world never has to see.
Correct.
And that's one of those things, unfortunately. It just is. It's one of those things. And it's I think, a symptom of the world that we live in now. And I want to talk about that just a little bit, if you don't mind. You've said that, faith is important to you. You mentioned that, you're a Christian and that you utilize prayer a lot in the things that you do. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, talk to me about your faith and how important a role does that play in your everyday life?
I'm glad you brought that up. My faith is the number one factor in my life. It is a Christian faith. I'm a non-denominational Christian that believes that I walk with a relationship with Jesus Christ. And what that means is that it's a relationship that should reflect love, compassion. I get up every morning with my wife and I hold her hands and I pray over us. And as the Christian leader of the family, I watch her eyes light up as she looks at me and thanks me and wishes me a great day. And I believe every day that my wife and I, my children, we walk out of the house with that armor of protection of Jesus Christ around us. It 100% is who I am. I find my identity as a man who walks in Christ's faith. And it's interesting because I've met with a lot of people like yourself, Ron, who I deeply respect. And one person told me, Shane, don't lead so much with the Christian thing. Maybe throw it in at the end. But I'm going to tell you this. The scripture says, if you deny me before man, I'll deny you before the Father. So I'm never going to deny my faith. It is the moral compass that is the basis for my decisions, my thought processes. I'm a sinner. I'm a foul person, but I return every day in prayer and try to do better. And how that will impact me on the city level is that those morals, those guiding principles that are found in the Bible, those Christian morals and standards are the morals and standards by which I will base my decisions and thought processes on.
While it may not always be, the end thing to do, and certainly, our faith is under attack a lot right now, more so than, in my recent memory. But I think that it says a lot about you, because somebody doesn't actually have to be a Christian to realize that there's an awful lot of what you just said, the morals, the values, affecting your judgment, how you will lead, what kind of person you are as a leader. Can we count on you? Are you honorable? Are you deceptive? What are your practices? And politicians in general, there's a lot of power plays out there. Not always are people as motivated or driven or beholden to those same values. Yeah. And so I think, and I'm just saying all of this to say, thank you for standing up for that. Thank you for being that man. Win, lose, or draw, I respect that so very much. I think that's just absolutely incredible. So thank you for that. Speaking about that, we do have a little bit of this group mentality in Celina right now. And without getting, too much down in the weeds with all of that stuff, it's if you draw a little closer to the political climate in Celina, you realize that there are two distinct groups that they kind of align a lot with each other. There's one group on one side that has a person on city council, and he kind of calls the shots in that group. And then you've kind of got the other group, and my idea of how that one works is there's also another person on city council that kind of, is kind of the ringleader of that group. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have people that you align with more in ideology or, concepts and things like that. But where it does become a problem is when the two groups start having such disagreement and allowing that to roll over into their decision-making processes and stuff. So let's just make an example. Let's say that there's a project and you and I are in a particular one of the two groups, and the other group, something that they did, we didn't agree with, whatever happened, and now you and I feel like we need to enact a little bit of, I wouldn't call it revenge, but we need to kind of even the score a little bit. Maybe we feel that way. So we might be inclined to vote against something that they support next. That is completely disregarding the citizens of this city, the people that we're here to serve. That is disregarding them completely. And that's where that group dynamic becomes toxic. And as far as I'm concerned, has no place, not only in our city council, but in any sort of a leadership position like that. You don't need to have those things. So I know you're aware of the two groups. I know that you've seen some of that. How do you feel that group dynamic is going to play out, and what will your role be in that?
Yeah, no, great question. And it's sometimes unavoidable. I will say that I have thoroughly enjoyed being on the EDC and having outstanding relationships with every single person on the EDC and the city council. Friendship is something that happens. Friendships align from proximity. They align from shared values. They align from running into each other and doing things. I have formed closer friendships with some people than others because of proximity, because of different coincidental alignments outside of anything political. And I'm not going to deny those friendships. Getting back to my identity. I teach, as I mentioned earlier, the people in our sober living homes, we have over 50, I teach them identity. Who are you? What do you stand for? And I'd be awfully hypocritical if I spoke about identity as much as I did and walked in the identity that I just claimed I walked in if I didn't hold true to that identity. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Ryan Tubbs, Shane Lambert, and Shay Scott have a lot of signs next to each other. You know how that happened? That happened because one rainy, muddy day, one person said, "I'll help you." And we got out there, and it was more convenient to help each other and utilize poles. But let me tell you something. I think Katie Dunn is fantastic. I think that Brent Beatty is a wonderful guy. I have nothing bad to say about any of them. I like all of their posts. So have I become acquaintances and friends with some people more than others? Yeah, I have. But I am going to voice, stand up for, and vote for what I believe in, regardless of whose sign is next to mine, regardless of who, I might go to karaoke with once in a while. That's friendship. But representing the representing the citizens of this city is leadership, and leadership starts with identity, and my identity is unshakable.
I like that. And so I believe that some of our best assets that we can possibly have on that city council are people who are committed to being independent-minded. It doesn't bother me at all if you align more with certain people. You're going to have certain things that you feel very strongly about. And let's just make an example. You might really be a huge proponent of, let's just say, downtown. And there may be one or two others on the council who feel very much the same way. And I don't think those types of alignment are negatives at all. I think that when you fall into a group and identify with that group and then make decisions based on, enacting some form of, retaliation, revenge, or, anything like that, that's when it becomes a real big problem. And so I align more with one of the two groups. That group right now doesn't think that I align with them, but that's a whole separate story. But I've invested in this town financially based on a vision that particular group really kind of helped put in place. And that hasn't changed. That's still that way. I'm a big fan of downtown, and I like, when people support downtown. I understand those alignments. I don't like when it affects those decisions in a negative way. So I believe that having someone who is committed to, doing what you believe is best, even if I don't agree with you. Yep. And we may not. You may become elected, and I may come to you and say, Shane, man, what are you thinking? Supporting that, or why won't you support this, or whatever. We may not agree, but I will always respect the fact that you're doing what you believe is right. That's what we put you there for, and that's what I think you have to do. We've got someone on city council right now like that. I feel like Brandon Grumbles is a prime example of someone who is not afraid to go against this side or this side. And I can't say, Brandon, you're in this group, or Brandon, you're in this group. Brandon just he's in the middle. And that's where I feel like I am. I certainly frustrate people within both groups right now, and I don't align with either one. I'm not invited to the parties and the events, and I'm not in the secret chats and all that kind of stuff, and I'm totally okay with that, because look at what we're doing right here.
Yes.
We are game changing as we sit right here right now. We are influencing and helping shape the direction of this city. And so I'm going to ask you right now, and from everybody, you've already said it, but I'm going to ask for a very public commitment. Will you commit yourself right now publicly to always working as hard as you can not to fall into that two group mentality and ever let that affect your decision making?
I 100% commit to that. I'm not a part of a group. Like I said, I may have friends. I hope to expand my friend base. I'm going to support and treat kindly whoever I serve with, but without any exception whatsoever, the decisions that I make will be based upon thorough thought. My lines of communication are open and will continue to remain open via my phone number, my website, and my email. I'm going to take into consideration what the people that voted for me think, and I'm going to weigh decisions carefully. I'm going to collaborate with and talk with other members of the city council, all of them. And I'm going to make an independent decision based upon my education, experience, and the people that I represent. That's the decision I'm going to make. That's the independent approach I'm going to take. And I'm going to say this: I don't care if it makes somebody else on city council or the mayor upset with me. as long as my thought and decisions are based upon the identity that I've just told you that I walk in.
I love that. Wow, that's some deep stuff right there. That's some really deep stuff. And how do you balance stuff like that? Well, you do it with Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars. That's how you do it. And I happen to know right now that you've got some. You brought some. I see the box sitting right down there. Can we take a very quick look at those before we wrap all this up? I want to see what you got.
These are pretty cool.
Okay,
these are another one of Corky Shane's little collections.
We've got Star Wars characters on the table.
We've got Star Wars, but this is another one that
super interesting.
These are very near and dear to me. Another one of my collected things. These are Matchbox cars that are roughly from 1975. Let's see, this one here is, 1978.
I recognize a lot of those, and I know those. They're definitely mid to late 70s.
And mid to late 70s with opening doors and
love it,
and removable. And once again, I was 5 years old when I got these.
That's great.
And they still have all the parts, and
love it.
So yeah, my Matchbox cars and my Star Wars figures are as silly as myself. Those are my prized possessions.
I think it's amazing. I think that's fantastic.
It's a lot of fun for me.
I only wish you were selling them. I know you're not, and I wouldn't, and I would never sell them. But if you should ever decide that you'd like to get rid of them, or if you find yourself in hard times, look me up, because I would definitely add these to my collections. I think these are fantastic, and I love the fact that you do this. So very, very quickly, I know you've got social media, you've got a website, you've got all those things. You want to share those with us real quick?
Yeah, let me make sure I say this right. Okay. On Facebook, it's Shane Lambert for Celina. Shane Lambert for Celina City Council Seat 5. I know that's long.
That's long. That's a lot. I'll post that in the show notes and possibly even put it on the screen for everybody so we can see it.
Thank you. My email, Shane, talk to Shane CTX @gmail.com. So talk to Shane, Celina, Texas is the CTX. Talk to Shane CTX @gmail.com. But the other thing that's kind of cool is that if you go to talktoshane.org, on my website, it tells a little more about me, what I stand for. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a real easy Talk to Shane submission form where you can just type in your questions, and I'm committed to responding to those same day. Nice. And that sends it directly to my email.
Very, very nice. So people can go on your website, they can ask you a question, and you promise to get back to them that day.
That day.
Okay, I like that.
Now, if it comes in at 11 o'clock at night, it might be the next morning.
Right. Not including hours that you're actually sleeping.
Right.
So, right. I gotcha. All right. Awesome. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being as open and honest and to a large extent vulnerable. There's, it's uncomfortable to do this. What people don't see is there's a lot of lights up here. There's a camera right there. You've got a microphone in your face, and largely you don't know what we're going to talk about.
No.
I told you, obviously I'm going to ask you, what do you love about Celina, or where do you eat? Some of the basic things, I'm going to ask those. But most of that stuff, you had no idea that was coming. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. And so I always say this to people when they come on the show: win, lose, or draw, would you be willing to come back and talk to us again in the future? Anytime. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me. And I would absolutely come back anytime. All right. That sounds good. All right, guys. And that is Shane Lambert.